my screen, if I can click those two buttons. And I know it's in Word, and that's old-fashioned. But welcome to the May chapter meeting of the Cross Timbers chapter. And I see that there's almost 50 people already signed in. We may have a few folks joining us in the next few minutes. If you are a guest, welcome to this meeting. You are more than welcome to introduce yourself in the chat and tell us where you're from. And we're glad to have you. If you're a member, we're glad to have you also. We're getting into that time of year when people have good excuses for not sitting down at the computer, because usually it's lovely and outside and we need to be outdoors. I have two announcements before our guest speakers get to start. The first announcement is that our open house for our fall training class, fall begins mid-August, will be on June the 15th. It will be via Zoom. And we would love to have many more folks that are interested, might be interested in joining our Master Naturalist chapter. We would love to have them join us for that Zoom meeting. I have sent everybody by email a copy of this information or this flyer, and it includes our mission, but I'd also like to point out that we created a vision for this training class this year, and that is we would greatly like to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in our chapter, and we're trying hard to learn how to do that. So if you didn't get an email from Sharon today or from CTMN, then please send president@ctmn.org an email, and I will send you a copy of this flyer individually, because maybe it went out to more people than your email system will allow, or maybe your email system has filtered me out. But we'd like for you to send this out to people you know, or any organizations you're a member of. You never know which person might be interested in joining our Master Naturalist chapter. So that's our first announcement. Our second announcement is kind of related, and I'm going to say I'll do a little bit of Mary Pearl and Michelle's talk, and that is to tell you that tomorrow at 12 noon, if you happen to be sitting next to a computer, it would be a great opportunity to join the TMN Tuesday. And that will be the speaker, Alex Bailey of Black Outside, which is an organization I did not know about until about a month ago. Anyway, it's a good idea for us to learn how to, us being me, to learn how to communicate, make contact with people that are different from me, people that have different backgrounds from me. And I'm looking forward to hearing Alex talk tomorrow. And the link there is txmn.tamu.edu, Be the Change, or you can just Google Be the Change TMN Tuesday. So with that, I am going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Mary Beth, please.
Well, welcome everyone. We are really happy and pleased to have our two state coordinators with us tonight. Michelle Haggerty is our state program coordinator. She works for Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and lives in Kerrville. And please correct me if I have any of this incorrect, Michelle. You are an adjunct professor in the Wildlife and Fisheries Science Department also, is that correct?
No, neither of us are professors.
Oh, sorry.
No, I am a wildlife biologist with Texas Parks and Wildlife. But yeah, my real job title is program coordinator for the Texas Master Naturalist Program.
And how long have you had that job title?
23
Wow.
years, going on 24.
Wow.
We're very lucky to have you. Because of Michelle and Mary Pearl's work, the Texas Master Naturalist Program has received numerous awards. One was the Keep Texas Beautiful Civic Organization Award. Another is the Harvard's Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation, named the program a bright idea in American government. Also, the Governor's Volunteer Award for Community Leadership. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, also known as TCEQ, gave the program the Environmental Excellence Winner in Civic Community Category Award. The Environmental Awareness Award in the Nonprofit Education category was from the Texas League of Women Voters. The statewide curriculum was a winner of the 2016 Conservation Education Award, sponsored by the Texas Chapter of Wildlife Society. And then also the State Curriculum 2016 Outstanding Education Materials Award, sponsored by the Alliance of Natural Resource Outreach and Service Programs. Did I get that correct? Okay. Then let's see. Mary Pearl began in the summer of 2014 with the Texas Master Naturalist Program. She is the Assistant State Coordinator, and she actually works for Texas A&M AgriLife. I did find out that Mary Pearl has a Bachelor's of Wildlife and Fishery Science from Texas A&M, where she was a member of the Corps Cadets. And believe me, that is not an easy thing to do.
You've done your homework on me.
Well, I should have asked you in advance, but you know, it's hard to be perfect.
It's crazy what the internet keeps in its backlog.
So please introduce yourselves further, and we are very happy to have you speak to us tonight.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank y'all. And we're excited to be here. It's sad that we can't be there in person. It's fun when Michelle and I get to travel across the state and visit with our chapters and host presentations like this to get to know you guys, because you are what makes the Master Naturalist Program work. You as the volunteers and as our members of our organization. I'm going to start sharing my slides, and then Michelle's going to get us introduced just a little bit more, and then I'll get started after that. There we go.
Yeah, I don't know that I could do a better job of than you did. We're happy to be here tonight, and thankful that you asked for us to give a presentation. And yeah, we've got your questions. We're prepared to answer them. And again, wish that, you know, we could be there together in person, but things just didn't work out for this go round. But
we will be there this fall, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too, in your backyard this fall. Well, I'll get us started. One of the things that that Mary Beth and Sharon asked us to talk about is a little bit of the history of the Master Naturalist Program, kind of the core values of the program at the state level, and then some of the programs that we're hosting at the state level, like the Be the Change series that Sharon was talking about earlier. So I'm going to focus a little bit on the history and what the program represents for our state and for our state agencies. And then Michelle's going to go into some of those programs and some of the upcoming things to add to your calendar. And really that learn here, volunteer here, change here. That's kind of the mantra behind the program. Something that is just so intuitive in what our volunteers do, is learning about their backyard so that you can be that volunteer to make those ecological impacts in your backyard as well. The true mission of the program, and hopefully you guys have seen this before, and I saw Sharon, it was on y'all's flyer, This is something that we ask all of our volunteers to keep in mind as they go forward in their master naturalist career. Is the program was developed in hopes to create and develop that core of volunteers that are dedicated to the beneficial management of our natural resources and our natural areas within the state of Texas through education, outreach, and service. And again, that local community piece is vital in the Master Naturalist program, as the places that you have the potential to make the biggest impacts is in your own communities and in your own backyards. And then, like Michelle said, she's been with the program for 23 years. I think this is our 24th year as a program. And it's been apparent from day one, the potential that exists behind the Master Naturalist program. I think the folks that got together on day one in 1997 in San Antonio had no idea what they were creating and the beast that this would become, but truly the multiplying effect of the Master Naturalist program has been incredible. The two partners in the state program today were there at the table on day one. Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, again, saw that value in creating this core of volunteers, leveraging resources through volunteer engagement and training programs, and really multiplying their agency's impact. You can see these are 2019 numbers. Texas Parks and Wildlife had 3,000 employees. A&M AgriLife had just shy of 2,000 employees. And the Master Naturalist program of the last 24 years has trained over 15,000 volunteers, with about 5,000 to 6,000 active volunteers in any given year. And so doubling the size of these two state agencies through the power of volunteers. And that has really just, again, as Mary Beth was talking about all of those recognitions, you mentioned that they were recognitions for Michelle and I. They're not. They're recognitions of the work that you as volunteers have done, the program. We're the manipulators or the masters behind the curtain in Wizard of Oz. What's his name? He's the guy behind the curtains. You guys are the true force of the program, and the ones who deserve that recognition. I like this because I wanted to show you how the program has grown since day one. Again, in 97, we started with the Alamo area chapter in San Antonio as our pilot chapter. The following year, there were multiple chapters that started. And then from there, it was single and multiple chapters every year since. We've slowed down in the recent years as we've had a capacity issue, and Michelle's going to talk about that when we answer some of your questions later that y'all had submitted for us. But the program has just continued to grow in its reach and the number of chapters. And what I like about every chapter is that it's different. Every chapter has its own personality, its own local culture, its own flavor. And that's what makes them so unique, but also so cooperative, because at the heart, there's still that mission of giving back to natural resources. And so anyways, I like playing this little slide because it shows just that overall growth. I think I need to update it. I think there's one chapter here, the Brazos Valley chapter added a few counties in the last year. And I think that was the one that I'm missing, but I'll get that updated. And again, just that scaling the impact of the agencies and scaling the impact of the work that you guys are doing by being active and conservation role models in your community. And as any state agency goes, we look at numbers and we like to talk about quantitative data, looking at total number of people and total number of hours. And the Master Naturalist program has been tracking this since day one. It used to be on the backs of note cards or on napkins sent to Michelle's office, and she got to go through all of those receipts and envelopes and paper written copies. And now we have the volunteer management system. But being able to document the quantitative values of the program has been really important to tell the story of the growth and the true scale of that impact. And so through 2020, 6.5 million volunteer service hours have been given by the program. 6.5 million youth and adults have been reached to date. 229,000 acres habitat has been enhanced. Acres of habitat has been enhanced, and over 2,000 miles of interpretive trail have been developed and maintained and or improved. There is a financial dollar value that's placed on volunteer service hours. Our program uses $23 per hour. It varies depending on the state and which agency you're talking to, but we use $23 per hour. And to date, that 6.5 million hours of volunteer service has provided to our state's resources $121 million worth of community service and financial impacts. And it's just incredible. Something that could not have been done by the state agencies without the power of volunteers. And y'all tell me if I'm going a little fast. I get excited and then I start talking really fast. I use my hands a lot, and y'all are lucky I'm not there because I'd be walking back and forth across the room, throwing my hands around. And then my favorite thing, we had a student worker who helped us with some GIS one year, and we looked at the number of miles of interpretive trail that have been developed or improved over the last 20 years. And we're nearly at a full circumference of the state of Texas. And we'll get there someday. But I thought that was really fun just to see truly, if we were to start walking, this is the total number of miles that Master Naturalists have made an impact on. And our program is not only our volunteers, it's the local leaders, the local partner organizations like Parks and Wildlife and A&M AgriLife, with our chapter advisors playing a key role in helping to maintain that sustainability of our chapters and provide direction and provide cultural and help or resources, speaker suggestions, classrooms, Zoom accounts, things like that. And so our chapters are not only autonomous within their communities and self-sustaining, but they're supported at the state level and at the local level with these two state agencies. And again, I've said this a couple times, but y'all are just the amplifiers of our agency's voices. And Michelle, I can't remember, is this where my part stops, or am I going to keep going?
Oh, it's you.
Okay. I closed the little part that tells me who's doing this one. So I'm going to do this one. Move this out of the way so I can see it. Okay. And then one of the things that I also want to talk about is who are our volunteers. We talked about the big program and the numbers, and that's great, but you guys are more than just numbers, and you're more than just the amplifier or the speaker effect. You really, our volunteers across the last 20 years have really created an identity. You can say the word master naturalist, or I'm a master naturalist, or the dragonfly pin, and folks across the conservation industry recognize that and know the wealth of knowledge, the impacts, know the value that you as a master naturalist volunteer provide in your communities. And I got interested one day, and this is in the curriculum, as we were writing the curriculum, kind of trying to identify who is a naturalist. How would you define naturalist? And two of my favorite quotes were, and they kind of vary in their degree of defining a naturalist. Christopher Buttle says, a naturalist studies the natural environment generally with a broad range of interests rather than a particular specialty. And we find that as a volunteer gets into the program and gets overwhelmed with 24 units of curriculum, and you're drinking water through a fire hose that first year, and you're just going, oh my God, I had no idea. I didn't know anything about anything around me. And you're just so excited by all of the things that it's fun to take all of that in and just get excited about all of the different areas of curriculum. And then we also get into those that do specialize, those that really light up when you start to talk about birds, or those that talk about water, and they light up with that particular interest, but they still have all of that curiosity about different ranges of natural resource experiences. And then the other quote there is, he instilled in me the mind and values of naturalist. And the words that I have bolded here are things that I feel like apply generally to all master naturalists, being open to all possibilities, being a careful observer, disciplined with facts, and working hard with those passions at the center to bear fruit. So I think that's important as, again, as you go forward, disciplining with facts, being open to all ideas and all possibilities, and following your passions as they lead you through your master naturalist career. And then our master naturalists have been leaders within conservation over the last 24 years. What's been interesting is master naturalist has, again, just become such a force of nature within conservation here in Texas that y'all have started movements and you have made new discoveries. There was a need for a specialty a few years ago. Master naturalists got excited about entomology, and the extension service saw the need for partnering master volunteers with an entomology specific training, and the master entomology program began. Texas Parks and Wildlife a few years ago saw the need for more water ambassadors, and master naturalists were ready at the forefront of that movement, and together kicked off the Texas Water Specialist program. And then our volunteers have done everything from identify new plant species and had them named after them, to identify the first incidences of invasive species. It was up in y'all's area in 2018, I believe, that the son of a master naturalist identified an emerald ash borer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and gave us the edge, gave us, the state agencies, conservation organizations, the edge on this wave of invasives, giving us that early detection information so that management plans that have already been planned or that were in place could be activated to procure that, or to stop that edge of invasive species. And the cactus moth is another great example down on the coastal region that was early identified by a master naturalist. She actually called up Baron Rector and said, "Hey, Baron, I think this is what you've been talking about for the last couple of years that we've been needing to watch." Sent him a few pictures, and within 48 hours, he and a team were down in, I think it was Galveston County, Brazoria County. They were down in Galveston County, Brazoria County, within 48 hours with a team ready for that early invasive wave. So that was exciting as well. And then our volunteers have made huge legacies for themselves. We just recently had two gentlemen from the Galveston Bay Area chapter achieve the monumental volunteer service milestone of 25,000 hours. That is a full-time employee for 13 years. And these gentlemen have been involved with the program from, I think, 2008 or so, 2004. And have just been again making huge waves across the conservation industry every day. And then finally, again, just looking at the quantitatives and where we're going and kind of who we are and where we see our programs and the opportunities for growth. And Sharon hinted at a little bit of this earlier. We have you've seen some of these numbers already. We have 15,000 volunteers that have been trained to date, 5,000 to 6,000 or so on average that are active every year. But what's interesting is that our bell curve is shifting. Our average age has dropped in the last couple of years, and our diversity indexes are increasing in the last couple of years. And we're excited about the new opportunities that new members bring to the organization as we decrease the average age and we increase the diversity of audiences within the program, and that the program is reaching as well. Yeah. So I went through that part fast. So if y'all have any questions, let me know.
I don't have a question, but I want to shout out to our member. I don't think he's here this evening. Jeff Quayle is the person who discovered the new species, Senecio quaylii. So cross timbers, yay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next part of the presentation is you had asked about what state initiatives we have going on. Obviously COVID and the year of 2020 changed everything for us. Last year we were reeling with adjusting and figuring out meetings like this and how to do it, how to offer training for our chapters like this, and really reacting. All of 2020 we spent reacting to ever-changing guidelines, changing situations, changing technology, not only in our professional life, but also in our home life too. So I love this picture. It was taken last year around August. And it's both Mary Pearl and I working with our kids at our side. So we never, every day last year, beginning in March, was take your kid to work week. And that's what we did. We worked alongside our little coworkers here, and not only did we work, but we tried to fit in being the teacher and homeschooling and everything else on top of it. So
yeah, I quit my teaching job. I don't want to be a teacher. Nope. No, mad respect for those that can teach, not something that I want to repeat.
Yes, I became a wildlife biologist for different teaching reasons, not a true educator. So yes, COVID changed everything about our program, and we're still seeing that in 2021. But even with everything that we reacted to or had to react to in 2020, we still came up with new ways, new innovations, new things to try and test with the program. And I'll go into some of those next. One of the first things that we kind of had to do and be reactionary with was the stark reality that our master naturalists were, I mean, all of us were on lockdown. And we weren't to go anywhere, we're to work from home. And so how in a stewardship-based, natural resource-based and outreach-based volunteer program, how we had to rethink how we could help our volunteers meet their service requirements. And so with that was born our virtual volunteer fair, where we had asked our partners, and really with the first one, we went to our sponsoring agencies and said, look, we need you to really think outside of the box. How can you use volunteers in a virtual setting? Think outside of the box of hands-on, place-based volunteering. How can our volunteers help you from home, from a computer, from their cell phones? This volunteer fair was successful. We had nearly between 40 and 50 projects that were submitted. And the response from our volunteers was overwhelming to these projects. And so overwhelming that we offered another volunteer fair just this year, virtual volunteer fair just this year in February. And our volunteers have told us they love it so much. They love the new ideas so much, and they've been able to get different project ideas and do projects kind of when it fits their schedule and from their home, and be more efficient about it in that sense too. That we're looking at doing another virtual volunteer fair in August. So we heard loud and clear from our last presidents meeting with the presidents, all the presidents of the chapters, that our volunteers really liked the volunteer fair, and to offer something in the heat of the summer was very optimal for them. So we're looking at offering, working on another volunteer fair in August of this year. Another initiative that we came up as kind of born out of after we had the virtual annual meeting. It dawned on us that there are excellent trainings going on all year that can be offered virtually, not just during the annual meeting. And so we had already been working on a TMN Tuesdays theme with some of our social media stuff, and we just pushed it further with TMN Tuesdays and offering advanced training coordinated from our state office, made available to you for all of our volunteers, all of our members, and even the public. That was the other thing, is that these TMN Tuesdays in our annual meeting going virtual offered a greater opportunity for us to reach more people in a different setting through this virtual setting, and recruit members through this avenue as well. So we every Tuesday this year, or once a month on Tuesdays this year, we're offering TMN Tuesdays. It's our advanced training event. And one of the things where we had to adapt again this year is that for 2021, we loosened our advanced training criteria on this event, where members we record each of these events and make them available on our website, and members can watch the events after the fact for advanced training credit. So that is one change, another adaptive change that we've made throughout the course of the past year and a half. Our next initiative, which was a spin-off of our TMN Tuesdays event, also being offered on another Tuesday during the month, is our Be the Change series. So in the past year, where there's been months of civil unrest and diversity, equity, and inclusion being brought to the forefront of social matters, we wanted to coordinate something for our program. We had members and chapters asking, and so we put together this Be the Change series, where you see the dates there on the screen. We have been aiming to investigate or dig deeper and present different avenues and different things to think about when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and use this as a launching point for chapters to be thinking further. How are you thinking further in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion in your projects, the members that you recruit, the people that you serve, the communities that you serve, the places where your projects exist, and the abilities of people who come to your service projects and locations. And then also diversity in our membership and those people we reach, not only through the training that the program provides and that you're providing back to your community and your new members, but also the training opportunities, the outreach, the information that you provide back to the public that you work with locally. And we already mentioned that tomorrow is our next Be the Change series speaker with Alex Bailey. So thank you for the plug on that. You have the link to register for that in the chat. Again, anybody can register, and we welcome you to and want to invite you to share that with other organizations and people with other organizations that you think would benefit from it. What we hope this series is doing is not only providing the information for our Master Naturalist chapters, but maybe being a resource and guide and playbook for other natural resource organizations in your community as well.
We also record both the TMN Tuesdays and the Be the Change, and those are posted on our website immediately after as well.
Yep. Another thing that we've were reactive with last year and proactive with this year. Last year we did a Nature Reflections video series, kind of a storytelling series where our members could submit a 1 to 3 minute video about what kind of the restorative reflections on how restorative being in nature and being a part of the Master Naturalist program was for them in the time of lockdown, how it helped them. And so this year we're doing a 1 year later nature reflections, and we'd like to invite anybody on the call today to submit a 1 minute video kind of reflecting on how nature, and then specifically how the Master Naturalist program, or you being involved in the Master Naturalist program, has given you refuge or provided benefits to you in the past year, kind of living in the conditions and everything revolving around the pandemic that we've been through or still are in.
Yeah, these can be
Those are
fun.
open through the end of the year, or end of the month. So we're planning right now to close the submissions through May 31st. And go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, I was going to say these can be fun. Last year's videos, we had some original songs. We had some people telling us about the bluebirds in their boxes. We had one person just doing a little bit of a butterfly dance, just really cool, fun things that y'all can do, and just tell us some of those benefits that you've seen in your refuge within nature or within the Master Naturalist program over the last year. And thanks, Sharon, for dropping that link as well. I'm going to share a few updates as well on some state initiatives. Our license plate, if you haven't heard, we are getting a Texas Master Naturalist license plate. This has been a process 2 years in the making. It takes a long time to make a license plate in Texas, and the pandemic did not help at all. Thanks COVID again. Well, we are getting a license plate. There are some changes happening at the DMV office, or TxDOT's office, DMV. So there's been some updates on the timeline, and we apologize about any confusion and appreciate your patience with that. What we know right now is that the plate is coming in June. When specifically in June, we are not aware of a specific date or even a specific week, just generally it's coming in June. And so we don't know exactly when, but we do know that you can order that plate through the link that's in there. One of the cool things about the Master Naturalist license plate is that it will generate funds for the Master Naturalist program. It is a $30 fee to purchase this type of specialty license plate without any sort of text specializations. It's $30, and 22 of that $30 comes back to the program. Michelle's going to talk a little bit about the funding when we get to that, because that was one of the questions that you guys had. But this is a great opportunity for not only for the funding perspective, but also just to share your membership, your role as a Texas Master Naturalist in your community. Again, just putting that dragonfly and that namesake out there. Okay, and then I saw a few questions in the chat. Looks like Michelle's answering those. The next thing that I want to talk about is the annual meeting, and we're coming to you guys. We're coming to your backyard. So the Texas Master Naturalist annual meeting. Actually, first, for those that are on video or those that can with the little emojis, will you raise your hand if you have been to an annual meeting before? In person or virtual? I'm seeing some hands raised. Awesome, great. And then raise your other hand if you have not been to an annual meeting, but you are so excited and you're definitely going to attend this year's annual meeting because it's in your backyard. There we go. So our annual meeting, if you have not been before, is an event not to be missed as a Master Naturalist, especially if it's coming close to you. We do move this meeting around every year to different corners of the state. So take the opportunity while you can for it to be in your backyard. And this, our annual meeting, again, just for those who haven't gotten a chance to attend before, it's 3 to 4 days of advanced training, fellowship, food. We always have a couple of good surprises, field sessions. There's always something exciting around the corner at a Master Naturalist meeting. Sometimes it is campfires, sometimes it's mothing, Sometimes it's live animals or dead animals, or both in the same room at the same time. And it's exciting because you're with your people, you're with your nature nerds and your tribe. So we really hope that you will put these dates on your calendar and join us at this year's annual meeting. We are just kicking off the about 6-month long process to put one of these together. Actually, it's a few-year process, or longer than that. The public end of it. And so we just put out our call for proposals. We're asking for speakers to propose sessions for the annual meeting. So if you've heard an incredible presenter talking about moths, for example, then ask that speaker, hey, can you please be a presenter at the annual meeting? Because I know other master naturalists are gonna wanna hear from you, Sam Kieschnick, as an example. And so this is the opportunity to get those speakers that you want to hear from, because other master naturalists probably want to hear from them, or shoot for the stars and say, hey, I wonder if we could get so-and-so, because I read their incredible book and we want to get them to be a speaker at this year's meeting. So that call for proposals is on that website, that link that Sharon put in the chat. Share that far and wide for us. That's the first one. And then as we're going forward with this year's meeting, we are going hybrid, and we're going fully hybrid, or we're planning on our event being hosted in a hybrid format where you can attend either in person or virtually. And different aspects of the event are going to be provided for both types of audiences throughout the weekend. And so that part of that and part of what that exactly looks like, because this is our first hybrid meeting ever, is still in the evolutionary process, but we'll be sharing all of that on that website as we get closer as well. But putting something like this together, and I should have said, our annual meeting traditionally in person is about 500 or 600 people. So it's big, and it takes a lot of people to help put something like this together. And so we come to you, our volunteers, for help. And we come to you for ideas for speakers, like I mentioned, but also for ideas and help hosting field sessions. So I reached out to Sharon last week, and we're going to get some folks from the Cross Timbers team to help us put together some field session ideas and locations, and it's your backyard, where should we go? Things like that. So that's filtering through Sharon to the annual meeting team. We're going to need people to help us move in. A production like this takes computers and tables and boxes of name tags and sometimes goodie bags and other fun things. So we're going to need physical help loading into the conference center. We usually bring a U-Haul worth of stuff. So if you're looking for some volunteer hours and you want to help us to unload some trucks in the fall, that would be great. We're also going to need some technical hosts, and we're still trying to figure out what this is all going to look like, again, with this hybrid meeting and this being new, a new type of event for us. We're probably going to have one person in each room helping to communicate from the in-person speaker to the virtual attendees, and making sure that the chat questions get asked verbally, and all of that. Those are the types of logistics. And I'm just running through this list of ideas of ways that you could possibly plug into the annual meeting this fall. Again, as you guys are one of the local chapters, and we'll be in your backyard, and then check in, and then so many other things for this year's meeting. As we're putting this event together, we're going to be reaching out to y'all and to the surrounding county chapters, and asking for help, and asking for manpower. And then the specific piece that the Cross Timbers chapter, so, and I'm sure Sharon and Mary Beth, I'm sure y'all have talked about this before. Good, so I'm not breaking surprises there. The Cross Timbers chapter has accepted the opportunity to host the silent auction, or a fundraiser event. And we can talk about the financials in just a little bit, but the local chapter, or the host chapter, you guys will be designated as the host chapter, as you guys are the local, it's in your backyard, it's your territory. You guys have the opportunity to host a fundraiser event. And what this fundraiser event looks like is going to be left in the very capable hands of Sharon and Mary Beth and our annual meeting team as we come together with Michelle and I to help manage what that type of event has the possibility to do across this new hybrid format. And they're going to need help. So please, for everybody else on the call, if you haven't already volunteered with Mary Beth, I'm sure she's going to put you to work. And she's got lots of ideas for volunteers needed. Sharon, did I say too much?
No, not at all. We've had some folks asking, would they be able to volunteer at the actual annual meeting, and your discussion there of needing help setting up and checking in, that helps us know, and we will just wait for you guys to send us the link to where we can sign up.
Yes, yeah. And again, like I said, some of this is uncharted. All of this hybrid aspect of it is uncharted territory for us. We've hosted in person and we've hosted virtually. How do we do it at the same time? And what help do we need to make that happen? So some of that might come later as we're trying to put all these pieces together. Are there questions about the annual meeting specifically?
I guess I'm wondering, what are y'all seeing in your mind's eye about how many people will be there? I know you have no idea. And we've had some of us have had the discussion because you asked at the president's meeting, how many people will commute and how many people plan to actually stay at the hotel. And you might get, if you're planning to attend in person, you might want to go into chat right now and tell us if you plan to stay at the hotel or to commute. That'll give Michelle and Mary Pearl a little more information.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that capacity information is going to dictate our total in-person attendee allowance with the hotel. And so we're working closely with the hotel to figure out, as guidelines from federal and state agencies change, what those capacity limits are. And that will be built into registration and lodging so that we're not breaking the rules as we get to the hotel. And again, that stuff is changing daily right now. Hopefully we'll get to a little bit of a norm over the summer. And we typically launch registration August 1st. So put that on your calendar too. That's our goal, is to launch registration that first couple of days of August, as we've always done. And so that would be good to kind of keep that in mind. And hopefully by then we'll have answers, or we'll have answers for that day, and then they'll change the next week or the very next day. As soon as we announce it, everything will change the very next day.
Well, I will admit that I've been making a little joke about the location, and I'm going to go ahead and say it out loud for those who haven't found the chat. But it will be at the DFW Marriott on the north end of the airport, and it's in Irving. And I really didn't know until I checked the map that part of Irving is in Tarrant County. So it's right on the edge of our jurisdiction, I guess.
We kind of just we've lumped it over on y'all's side of the line.
Mary Pearl, there's some people are needing a little bit of dollar figure figures to make some decision, or just kind of enter their information in the chat. So there was a question about registration costs and then hotel costs. So
I can share some of that. We don't have. I can share some of that from historical numbers, and I can share the historical numbers, and then you can use that as guesses for this year. We don't have a registration cost for this year's event yet. A lot of that's going to depend on some of those final capacities that the hotel sets. So we won't know that until right as we're launching registration this summer. Again, that's very tied to the hotel and the facility use costs that will be tied with that. Our 2019 annual meeting in Rockwall. I believe a full in-person registration was $325 or $350. 20 minutes. Thank you. It's been for your dinner night, so they're totally capable of making their own dinner. Where was I? I think it was $325 or $350 for, and that included 3.5 days, all the food, no lodging, but all the access to all the parts of the meeting. Lodging is typically separate. We contract lodging rates at usually government per diem at about $120 to $140 per night with taxes. And so that's the in-person history that we know. That's going to change a little bit again with this year's meeting, and then the final capacity issues or capacity limits with this hotel. Last year's virtual annual meeting was $55. And that may change for a virtual component with this year's hybrid meeting, because there's different virtual hybrid costs associated with having additional microphones and providing computers for in-person speakers. Again, that's all of these calculations that go, Michelle's going to laugh, but I have a huge love of spreadsheets. And we have a huge Excel spreadsheet calculator built in with all of these variables and all of these what if factors to provide those kind of final numbers for us. We work really hard to keep our meeting cost effective because you are our volunteers. The most valuable thing that you give is your time. We don't use the annual meeting, and Michelle can go into this, as a generation of funds. It is to be able to provide you, the goal of the annual meeting is to provide you with that training and the fellowship with your fellow master naturalists. That was a very long answer to your question, Michelle.
Well, we can move on. I think we'll be able to answer some of the other questions through the rest of the information.
And this is just a little sneak peek. This is some of the previous year's annual meetings. Again, we have both dead and live animals. Sometimes they're on leashes. We have field sessions, campfires. We had s'mores that year. We had a band. We have a good time at the annual meeting.
Okay, so the next part of the presentation is we received a few questions. Really, it was only 3 questions, but there were multiple questions within those 3 questions. We'll attempt to answer those tonight for you. One of the first questions we got was, what makes a successful chapter? And from our perspective, and what we see from good, successful, working chapters all across the state. We have nearly 50 of them now. These are the things that make a chapter successful, or what we see. Chapters are dedicated, or they stay true to the Master Naturalist Program mission. Chapters have a diverse and, more importantly, involved membership. So what makes a chapter is not just the board and the leaders that make up that board and leading your chapter. It's an involved and informed membership as well. So get involved, stay involved, be a good member of your chapter, be supportive of your leadership in your board, and support them. That's what makes the world go round in chapter life for the program. Other successful chapters have a genuine interest in sharing knowledge with the public, not only their knowledge, individual knowledge, the collective knowledge of a chapter, the projects and programs of a chapter. Just share what you're doing. That's one of the whole premises of what the Master Naturalist Program was founded on, is what good is knowing and having information if you can't share it and enlighten others around you. And the program itself was established as another arm to help share the research and scientific public information that the agencies bring to you. The whole program is developed for you to help us in extending that mission and the information that we have. have a diverse set of volunteer service projects, offering something for everyone. Diverse projects brings diverse membership and serves diverse audiences. Be adaptive to community, or be adaptive with your community and with your community events. That's something we've all had to do in the past year and a half, and we'll have to do going forward. Just be adaptive. Adaptive is key and has been key in the past 2 years almost. Another item of being a successful chapter is to have good leadership, and then have plan for leadership turnover and sustainability of good leadership. So almost like a train them up. You know, the leaders there, you have leaders of your chapter today, but all of you are also potential leaders of your chapter for tomorrow. So good leaders share information, share responsibility, and share the workload in creating that succession of the chapter. So a good leader will involve involve your membership in the decision-making and learning the governance of the chapter to pass that on to the next individuals who take their place. Hold regular meetings. There are some chapters within our system who maybe only hold quarterly meetings. From where I sit, those chapters are not as successful as the chapters who are communicating with their members regularly, meeting regularly, offering opportunities for their membership to communicate, get together, however that is, whether it's virtually or not. People come to the program for the family and the community that we have created and provide through this program. And so keep up that community, keep up that communication, and that keeps people involved. That keeps your membership and sustains a long-term volunteer for your chapter, for the program. Social aspects, I kind of mentioned those two things. We have members come to the program for the community. They're finding like-minded people. And for some of them, it's after a lifetime of work and life events, they're finding their people by being involved in the program. And then lastly, you can't have community and togetherness without food, fun, and fellowship. So the chapters that have food and beverages, like you mentioned earlier, that helps build fellowship and community within the chapter too.
Harder this last year than any of the others, and more intentional social gatherings virtually out of any of the other years. Do y'all have any questions for Michelle on that one? Okay. Michelle, do you want to talk about this one as well?
Yeah. So one of the questions we got from you was regarding directors and officers liability insurance. It's often referred to as D&O insurance. Does your board need a policy? And do other chapters hold a policy? So you asked us for history and what other chapters have or have done. And the short answer to this question is really, it depends. Every chapter situation is different. And what we've learned from years of asking legal counsel is that each chapter is so different. And, you know, we mentioned each chapter has their little different personality from every other chapter. In that the people and the projects that you have, and maybe even the bank account that you have and what's there, is a different scenario than any other chapter in the state. So each chapter is going to be different. And the short and dirty answer is it depends. But then secondly, you really need to seek independent professional counsel on for your chapter and your chapter situation on what you need. There's no one one size thing that fits all. So if this remains a question for you, we encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional in this area. We did talk about this question based on the question that you asked at our last president's meeting. So one of the new things that we've been doing with our since the pandemic is just meeting with all of our chapter presidents once a month. And we asked the question, this exact question based on your questions to us during our last president's meeting in April. And what we learned is that in the past year, about 2 to 3 chapters hold an excess liability policy for their boards. And then 2 to 3 chapters have their own directors and officers insurance policy. And those two things are different. And we put an asterisk there because the 2 to 3 chapters, they could be the same chapters, or it could be different chapters. So it could be anywhere from 4 to 6 different chapters, or 2 to 3 chapters across the state holding either one of those or both of those policies. We do have an insurance one-pager that was put together that kind of summarizes some of this information. We encourage you to look at that and kind of use it as a launching point for your own individual counsel if this is something you want to learn more about and receive recommendations on. And Mary Pearl's dropped that link in the chat. The next question we got was, how is the Master Naturalist Program funded? And this is an age-old question that we receive. And so I'm glad you sent it ahead of time because I was finally able to go to our supervisors and say, we get this question all the time. Help us put it into a slide or a couple of slides describing how the program is funded. And so we did that. So what we've established is that it takes about $225,000 a year to administer the Master Naturalist Program from the state level. What that includes is 2 full-time employees. So that $225,000 a year supplies mine and Mary Pearl's salary, our operating and office expenses. And then it also includes and supports the work of anywhere from 3 to 5 part-time workers or part-time employees, whether that's contract workers or student workers that we have in our office. We currently have 3 part-time employees right now supporting the program, but we could use so many more if we had additional funds. This funding, the $225,000 annually does not include the support that your chapter advisors provide you. So chapter advisors are funded through their own mechanism, not funded by the Master Naturalist Program. So when a chapter advisor is assisting your chapter, it is truly, they are not fund driven. It's not because they're funded by the program or they receive funds for doing so. It is because they are committed to our mission. They're committed to you as a chapter and what you're doing, and they need your help.
And a lot of times our advisors don't have it in their specific job description that they must work with master volunteers. They do it because, like Michelle said, they see the benefit in the program and they see the benefit that volunteers can provide in the community. So I described how much it takes to kind of fund and deliver and offer the program that we have today. It's $225,000 annually. But where does that money come from? So we receive a grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it's called the Wildlife Restoration Program. And it's administered through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service through to Texas Parks and Wildlife as the state fish and game agency. The monies themselves, and this is money that is available, and this is the Wildlife Restoration Program. I hope you learned about this during your training.
is available to all state fish and game agencies in the nation. It originates, the dollars in that program originates from an excise tax on firearm and ammunition sales. And then states are allocated a certain amount to receive a certain amount each year based on license sales, land, public land mass, and population. So Texas itself receives quite a bit of, we receive currently the largest proportion in the state or in the nation, just because of those three factors that, through that how the funding is doled out are very high in Texas. Our Master Naturalist program, the $225,000 that it takes to administer our program, we are funded by that Wildlife Restoration Program funds. It does require a match, so it's a 75-25% match. We have to match those funds, that $225,000, at the tune of our state matches 25%. So Texas matches these funds with a very small portion of your volunteer service hours. That's how no dollars are actually received in return for your hours. We use your hours as match to the grants that we receive. Some of the specific questions we received about the program, kind of those follow-up questions within the three questions that we received was, how much of the program administration is funded from donations? We actually do not receive any donations to the Master Naturalist program itself to fund our positions and our projects. The other question was how much of program administration is funded by chapters. Again, our chapters don't pay for anything. They don't pay for pins, certificates, the other things that they don't pay for our time, things like that. So chapters don't fund the programs themselves, the program itself. And then lastly, the other question that we received was how much of the program administration is funded by the annual meeting? And as Mary Pearl explained, the annual meeting is its own animal. And the funds that are the money, we're working on a zero-based budget for that. So what it costs to hold the annual meeting is equal to what the registration fees are. So we try to do cost recovery with the registration fees and the annual meeting, on the annual meeting. If you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so one of the questions you might ask, this wasn't one of your questions, but one of the questions that always leads people to ask is, how is the state program keeping up with growth? And the short answer is we're not. And that's a big problem for us. When I came to this program 23 years ago, there were 4 chapters in the state and 475 volunteers. Today, we have nearly 50 chapters in this program and over 15,000 volunteers. We only have 2 full-time staff. So the staff needs are not keeping up with the demands of the program and the growth of the program. And we could honestly use 5 or more full-time employees to really support and prop up this program and support you as chapters in your regions. For the last few years even, we have had to put a stop to some of the things that we offer and some of the support that we offer. We've had to push off development of chapters, new chapters, just because we are at a maximum capacity. Our plates are overflowing. And 2020 didn't help things at all. We're busier now than we ever have been. We have more and different questions to answer now than we have ever had in the past. We really need help. So the next question you may ask that might lead you to ask is, doesn't the federal grant cover all those expenses? And no, not even close. In the words of my supervisor, not even close. The Wildlife Restoration Program is a federal program funded, as I mentioned, by the excise tax on firearms and ammunition. And that program is very specific about what we can and cannot do, and how we can spend that money. So as an example, I can no longer purchase with the funding that we have available, service and milestone pins. We have to seek different funds in order to replenish our pins when we need to. We can't make money on the annual meeting. That becomes a different type of program, so we can't receive deposits for the annual meeting. So we have to find different ways. We have to be creative with how we take in registration costs for the annual meeting and how those are spent. So the other thing is that the federal funding that we receive, none of it can go to support the annual meeting. And what that means in terms of the annual meeting is that sometimes we're often over allocated on the annual meeting account that we do have with extension, in that we have to plan a couple years in advance, 2 or 3 years in advance for annual meetings. And so those accounts that we have only have an annual, one annual meeting budget in it. And so they're over allocated at this time. If something were to happen, last year was a great example. If something were to happen and we have to pay on a contract where we weren't able to hold an annual meeting, we don't know where those funds would come from to cover those costs at this time, because we don't have a surplus of money for the annual meeting and for registration.
Michelle, this is a good time. I'm going to interrupt you. There's been some questions in the chat of kind of the what other things are being done to provide some of these funds for things like milestone pins that still need to get purchased. And the license plate is a great example. That's a new avenue of fundraising that our program is investigating and working towards to generate funds. Dick asked the question about the master naturalist. Of course, as soon as I unmute. No. Dick asked the question about the Master Naturalist Endowment. We recognize this overwhelming need for new staff and for more sustainable not sustainable, but for growing funding for the Master Naturalist program to provide with that capacity load. And so we started an endowment fund in 2016, and that has been slow growing, but it is growing, continuing to generate revenue to kind of like a snowball, to redeposit into that endowment fund and continue to grow. But that's also just another one of those examples of it takes time to make money, to make more time available, to make more money, to make time more available, and more staff dedicated to that. So that's part of that snowball effect. And Michelle got into the annual meeting. There's some more questions, but I want to talk about the annual meeting just a little bit, Michelle, if you don't mind. And so, like she said, the annual meeting is a unique training event, and that is at the core of that program. It is a training event, not a fund generating event. And the annual meeting typically costs about $250,000 to put on. That's all expenses, with all the technology and the food and beverage and registration bags and printing and everything else that's included with an event of that size. And again, it's non-generating. Any small fractions of profits, we try to keep that as a break-even event. But if there are profits, we use that as a part of a continual snowball into future years meetings. So again, Michelle mentioned that we typically have about 2 to 3 years worth of contracts for hotels. Hotels typically book out 2 to 3 years in advance. And so we have to have, according to our state agency financial guidelines, we have to have an entire meeting's worth of cost ready for an event like what could have happened last year, a fail-safe. They call it an encumbrance, where we have to be able to say, if we're forced to cancel tomorrow, we can pay off those contracts, and they're not the full 250,000. Gosh, no, but we have to be able to hold those deposits for future years meetings for any deficiency. And so again, with that annual meeting, it is just a separate account that we manage outside of our other operating accounts and our salaries and the program funds. It's a whole separate pot that stays within that. Nothing comes out of the annual meeting that doesn't go into the annual meeting. It's all self-generating. One of the specific questions that you guys had asked in regards to the annual meeting was the silent auction or the fundraiser event. So typically we have the local host chapter have some sort of fundraising event where the host chapter earns 20% of the proceeds from that event. And 80% is donated back to next year's annual meeting in order to provide things like travel scholarships for chapters, or in order to provide things like speaker honorariums for some of our rock star keynote speakers that we've been able to have in the past. So that is another way that we've been able to fund some of these unique experiences at the annual meeting that we can't fund from other sources. Michelle, are there questions in the chat?
So there's a question about, do y'all do the counting or do you hire an accountant?
So one of the great benefits of working for state agencies is that we have a state agency business office. So I work for AgriLife and Michelle works for Parks and Wildlife. And so we each have business offices that manage our unique individual program funds. And then there's a combined reporting for the program annually. Are there other questions? I saw Kim's question, do chapter members' fees cover any state expenses? No, our chapter fees and chapter membership dues stay locally within those chapters to help support the programs that your chapter is managing and your volunteer projects.
Yeah, there is no fee or there's no money that chapters owe the state program, or that's not a funding mechanism for us. We don't ask our chapters for that.
And again, a lot of that was established in early program development with that intention of creating these locally autonomous groups with that learn here, give here model. We want you to make these impacts in your local communities. And so we want you to provide those funds in directions for that, where that is needed within your local community. Michelle, do you want me to go to the next slide or answer some more questions?
We can go to the next slide.
Okay. The other question that you asked, kind of wrapping up some of the questions that Sharon and Mary Beth sent forward with us, was what about the Junior Master Naturalist program? And I asked Michelle if I could answer this question because the Junior Master Naturalist program has been my personal passion for years. But it is just not possible at this moment for us to focus on developing a statewide junior master naturalist program for a number of different reasons. And you could probably guess some of those by the last couple of slides. First off, we're not even eligible to work on junior master naturalist programs. So again, how we're funded through U.S. Fish and Wildlife, we are an adult training program currently, and we don't have funds for youth training programs. And so Michelle nor myself can work on developing a youth program. Our program did find some skeleton money a few years ago for getting some early structures for a junior master naturalist program started and a logo created. And that was a great step in the right direction. And then from there, many chapters have self-initiated and locally administered a junior master naturalist project within their communities. And so we've got probably a dozen to 24 or so chapters that have locally developed their own junior master naturalist club group project. And while we don't have the resources or the ability, the capacity to support them, they are still able to participate with youth educational programs as they want to. Michelle and I both envision, or I'm speaking for myself, I envision that a junior master naturalist program is possible with all of the happy faces and the smiling kittens and the stars, and my hopes and dreams for the program is to get something like that going. But currently, without additional funding, it's just not possible. Michelle, we've done all the negatives, so I want you to end us on this positive note.
We can't leave you with all the things we can't do. But we can tell you about some of the things that could help. And some of the things that are actually in the works right now, or something that you as an individual can support right now. We've been telling you about the Recovering America's Wildlife Act for a few years now. That is something that could change our lives as a master naturalist program. It's a similar funding model with less restrictions. So states would receive, state fish and game agencies would receive dollars to the tune of about 1.3 billion a year to help these non-game issues, help habitat, help non-game species either recover or not become extinct. The wildlife restoration funding helps game species or species that are already hunted. The Recovering America's Wildlife Act would assist education, outreach, stewardship, science, habitat for species that are not currently hunted. To Texas, this current bill, HR 2773, to Texas, it could mean more than $50 million per year. And there are opportunities in this. There is a mandate that a certain percentage of the money from each year has to go to outreach and education. So this is our opportunity for a junior master naturalist program, supporting this bill, calling, as an individual, letting your representatives know that this is something you support, is something that ultimately could support our program in growing, our program in increasing its own diversity in the form of youth, and increasing the diversity of what we offer as a program in the form of youth programs. It would be able to further help support restoration, research, habitat management, and stewardship projects all across the state. And what better mechanism to do that locally than through your master naturalist chapters?
With that, we've kind of closed through the questions that y'all have asked, Sharon and Mary Beth.
I'll go ahead and answer the one question that I heard as we were getting on So the one question I heard from several of you, or I heard it mentioned a couple times, that we don't have in this, but
Yeah.
several of you had asked when you can meet face-to-face again. And so from the state program, there's nothing now that prohibits you from meeting face-to-face unless your local authorities, your local communities are prohibiting that. So right now, our program, depending on where you are in the state and what your local county or city is saying, you could meet together while following social distancing guidelines and rules and regulations that your local community and county is requiring.
Is that still with social distancing?
Yes. Yes. By
Yeah,
Master Naturalist guidelines it is.
Yeah, and whatever would be additional to by your local county or city, wherever you're meeting.
Okay.
And so
More
as
stringent.
as any guidelines from our two state agencies come to Michelle and I's desk, we update CTMN program guidelines with those considerations in mind, and then post our TMN COVID guidelines for the state on our website.
Right. Right. Thank you so much.
Sometimes that's a day or two, or a week or two in mind. So keep in mind that that again, we both work for state agencies, and sometimes it takes a few days or weeks for some things to roll downhill to us and get those new announcements out as well.
We are so grateful for y'all's time, and I think one of you, I think it was Mary Pearl, promised someone off to the side 20 minutes, and your overtime, you're going to hear about it. That was more than 20 minutes ago. So I wish we could, we need a sound effect so you could hear the applause. If you get a chance to check the chat, got quite a few people that are thanking y'all, and it's great to put faces with names and great to hear your voices. Yeah. And I know several of us will be in communication with you, so we can see you again at the annual meeting. And we're going to let Mary Pearl and Michelle log off so they can do their other full-time jobs. And we'll probably have a few more announcements after we send you all on your way. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, so we probably have some announcements. So someone just unmute yourself and chime in. Yes.
Okay, this is Carol, your membership
Carol.
director. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Want to thank everybody who submitted photos to the photo contest this year. I have gotten them bundled up and submitted them to 3 judges, 3 unbiased judges. And we shall announce in the the June 21st meeting who the first place, second place, and honorable mentions are in each of the categories. Thank you so much, everybody, for submitting your photos. Some of them are just too awesome. The judges are going to have a really hard time this year trying to figure out who's going to be the winners, but thank you so much, everybody.
Well,
thank you, Carol.
Thank you. How appropriate, because our June meeting speaker is a professional photographer.
Oh my goodness. We had over 47 entries.
That's wonderful.
Great.
That's more than we did last year.
He's going to talk about photographic nature.
Awesome. Perfect timing.
Yes.
Brent has a question here asking for an announcement about the City Nature Challenge results. And I don't know the exact results, but Dallas-Fort Worth did wonderfully. And unfortunately, those other people down in the Houston area, maybe because there's so many of them down there, I think outnumbered Dallas-Fort Worth, but we did great.
Would you like me to make the announcement?
Please do.
So for the state, we won. The general assumed winner of the competition each year is based on number of observations, by which we won quite a bit over Houston. When it comes to the world DFW, well, we were having quite the discussion on this past weekend as to how you see it. I say we came in third in the world. Technically speaking, we came in fourth because there was a category for everyone who doesn't live in a city that was participating. So to me, that's us against the world. It doesn't count. So we were third. I will always say we were third. Versus the number one winner was South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And they won last year by an amazing amount. This year, I think they were a little over double us. And the second place winner still has my mind boggled, the Washington, D.C. area. And then DFW in third place, asterisk fourth place.
Well, I'm glad to hear we beat those folks that are downriver of the
Absolutely,
River.
absolutely. It was close at the beginning. I really thought they'd come back and pull ahead, but they just seemed to fade away and never pulled ahead.
Well, they've had a lot to contend with this year.
That is true. That is true. But definitely thank you to each and every one who participated. Every year it's a big deal to me. This year I was really struggling to get as excited as I thought I was going to be, but I managed to get in there and get real excited by the time it rolled around.
And you even managed to see your daughter go to prom.
Yes, I
So it was the same
I
weekend.
would have been mothing that night. See, so that cost me. That cost me dearly.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you. I do want to tell folks that it probably in about another week, you members will be getting a survey from me. If you're on the list, you'll get the survey. If you don't get the survey and you want to take this survey, please contact me. It's a real email with a real link from Sharon. It'll be a Google form survey. You don't have to have a Gmail account. And we're going to try and ask you all a few questions about, okay, so let's say we can all go back to the Botanic Garden and sit side by side in the meeting room. Are you ready to come back? Or are you one of those folks who probably would like to keep Zooming for a few more months? So we've got a few, there's only 12 questions on this survey. We've got a few questions about how do we transition back to in-person activities? And then we have a few questions about what kind of information would you like to have from the chapter, and would you like more emails, or do you use Facebook or whatever, all those horrible things called social media? Because believe it or not, we do want to do a job that's helpful to you. So I hope that you'll have a chance to, take 3 to 5 minutes to fill out that survey. I've sent it to the board first. So if we can get past that auspicious group of email users, wink, wink, then, and if the survey works out, then we'll be sending it to everybody in the membership. Any other announcements? Thank y'all so much for your time. I think a very few of us may continue to stay online here, but unless you know the secret password about staying on for another meeting, then you are free to go enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.